Hello, this is Arthur Nix with EWKS, and I'm a heavy bid contract trainer. And today I want to talk about coding crews in heavy bid. I've had a couple of customers ask me about this. They're new users. They want to know the best practices for this, and I've seen a lot of good setup before. And the idea here is a clean, effective, easy to use coding structure that's not complicated. And so that's what I'm going to cover today. On the lower left is my contact information. You're welcome to browse my blog, which has many years of blogs concerning heavy bid and other subjects on construction and estimating. So let's get into this. All right, first of all, in heavy bid, we got a crew code of 6 characters. All right, so that seems kind of limiting at first, but if you go all the way back to our DOS days, we used to have to use the first 2 was taken up with AA, so that would only leave us 4. So 6 is more than enough. I know it seems a little limiting in today's world. Maybe I wouldn't mind a couple more, but the problem is most people, if they had more, let's say they had 12, they try to put the whole description in the code. And I see this all the time with new users. They don't really understand what is a code, all right? And they just try to write out the whole thing, the whole description in the code. So I really don't mind it being limited to 6 characters. This can be letters, numbers. Don't use spaces. Very bad practice to put spaces in. If you want to have something in there, divider, use a dash or use a period. Don't use a space. Okay, that's just the best practice in heavy bid or any kind of database structure. All right, so pointers. Conserve coding space. Okay, that's my number 1 pointer. Don't try to spell it out like rebar, R-E-B-A-R. Okay, that takes up 5 characters right off the bat. All right, use RB instead. ASPH should be AP or even A, if you want to be really efficient. So conserve coding space. Also, try to keep the code to 5 characters or less. So this saves the last position, the 6th character, as a modification indicator if the crew's been modified or not. And I'll cover this later. And then you want the coding scheme to be consistent. So kind of plan your coding scheme beforehand and then stick to it. All right, and that way it'll be consistent. I like to have like the same number of characters for my initial setup. Just looks clean. Everybody knows what to expect. There's not you don't have 3 characters of 5 characters, 6 characters. It's all 5 characters, okay, unless it's a modified crew. All right, here's a sample coding scheme. By character, the first position, okay, would be define crew type, would be a letter. It could be a number too. There's nothing wrong with using numbers. Most people use letters. Second would be the second letter to define the crew type. And then the third would be a subtask, okay, forming or pouring or stripping, that type of thing. You could even use the 4th one as continuing the subtask, okay, so that gives you 4 characters right there. And then 5 would give you, okay, I have, this crew, this crew, this crew, each one is a different crew. I have seen people put in, they have like 3rd character would be L for labor, 4th character would be number of laborers in the crew, 5th character would be E, and then 6th character would be the number of pieces of equipment in crew. I get that. I just really don't, as an estimator, think that's that useful. I'll see that when I pull up the crew, or maybe I show that in the description. All right, that might be more efficient in the description, especially like the let's say it's a dozer crew or a excavation on site crew, and you might list the major pieces of equipment in the description. Now, the 6th character would be your indication of a modified crew. And you can see here in the example, for like the concrete forming crew, I use an A, and that would be in the 6th character, and that would telling me that I've modified my CCF into crew. So this would be more important maybe if you're working with multiple estimators where you don't want to maybe modify the CCF M2. You want to keep it consistent throughout the estimate. So if you modify the crew, you will save it back to the setup. And I'll show that an example of that in a minute. All right, just another coding scheme, very similar. I know this is not a whole lot different, but in this case, I'm using a letter again, a letter in the 2nd position, a letter for the subtask, the 3rd one, but then the 4th and 5th are just going to be numbers here. I think that works pretty well too. If you can restrict your subtask to just a single character, again, I tell you, most people are looking at descriptions. You're really just using the code to keep this in some kind of sequential order. A tool I like to use is an Excel spreadsheet to kind of, first of all, plan out how I'm going to code the headers. Once I have the headers planned, then I can go ahead and do the rest of the coding. But the headers are crucial. So here I would start. I'm going to have this as a download on my in the blog where this YouTube video will be posted. And so you can see this is the planning tab right here. I'll just go ahead and plan my descriptions right here and my first two characters. And then what I'll do is I'll copy these over to the coding sheet right here. Now, what I use for coding is a concatenate command. And so this allows me to be more consistent. You can just go ahead and just code it, in a single column. I like this method because what it does, it just creates this right here where I can quickly change this out. If all of a sudden, if I want to put in, let's say A's right here, my code is done. All right, there's my code. This is what's going to be imported into HeavyBid. So I can also just copy, if I want to create more of these codes, I can copy this down and then I can just go ahead and create these codes. So it allows me to quickly and consistently set up codes. I use this also in my material code book, activity code book, the same concatenate command plan. Now, what I suggest doing is, first of all, putting your description and then coming and filling out all the crews that you need, the description right here, before you start coding, okay? That way, you know where you're going, and then once you finish that particular list of crews, you start on the next. You come over here and you grab the next description right there. Also, I will put my header as all caps. This will be my header. You can see that says yes. And then I'll put the actual crew as a no right there. Also, I can have crew notes. This can be much longer than 28 characters. So this could have some details on production or something that you want to communicate to all the estimators. I'm not sure the limit. I'm sure you will not run out. And this can be imported also when you import in this crew list right here, and then start filling out the crew members and equipment pieces inside of HeavyBid. Now, the crew note will also, when you bring it into the tree view, when you bring it into an activity, it will copy that crew note into the activity note. So I think that's pretty useful. Also, what I do in my description is I have on the right-hand side, I have a column, and it's the length of the description. If it runs over 28, it will put that in red, and that tells me that I need to, decrease to 28 characters or less the description. All right, so that's kind of how I do my planning and my coding for the crews. I mentioned earlier about modifying a crew in HeavyBid and adding that last character So I'm going to demonstrate that right now inside of HeavyBid. So here we have a clearing crew right here, and I'm going to go ahead and modify it. Let's add another dozer. Now it's modified. You can see the modified right here. But I don't want to keep, I want to actually save this out to a new code that will indicate that it's been modified. So I right click right here, and you notice right on the crew code and down at the bottom, and this is fairly new, you can see copy to crew setup. All right. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bypass the first section. I'm going to go C, and a new code is going to be CLMD1A. And then I'm going to come over here and say mod and put my initials in the description. That way, other estimators in this estimate would know who this estimate was modified, where it came from, first of all, which is CLMD1, and then who modified it and saved it. So this will keep estimators from overriding maybe other estimators' crews. So here I'm going to go ahead and put OK. And now I have created that crew in the setup, and it's also put that crew right here in this activity. You can also get to that if you are familiar with the cat and hat icon, the fourth icon down. There it is right there, and then copy the crew setup right there. Some might be more familiar of getting to this function right there. But it's just a matter of right click and copy to crew setup, and then you get all the same options right with that shortcut. All right, so that concludes coding crews today. I hope you appreciate this. If you do like it, how about click on the like button so I kind of know if this is kind of content that you're looking for. And this is Arthur Nix with EWKS.